Japanese books are simply incredible. And that's what this video is going to be about. Japanese literature, and I thought I would do a video where I recommend my top Japanese books. I have quite a big selection of books, as you can see, but I thought I chose books that I thought would be easy to for newcomers, for people who haven't read Japanese books yet, and I chose some books that are quite easy to read when you want to get started, when maybe you don't read that often. And I chose definitely different categories, from romance, from very sad books, from very philosophical books, very very cute books, very short, witty books, funny books. I have a very good eclectic selection, I think. Yeah, I'm just in love with Japanese books. I fell in love with it, with Japanese literature, especially modern contemporary Japanese literature, a few years ago. And whenever I go to the library nowadays, whenever I see a Japanese name on on a book, I immediately buy it. There's no doubt. Like, even if I find another book that maybe might look prettier, I mean, I don't judge books by by its cover, but still, I will always choose a Japanese book. They never disappoint. I never had a disappointment from reading a Japanese book. I do not know why Japanese literature is so unique and so different from Western literature. I've read my share in classics of American literature, British literature, German literature, French, Russian. So I definitely, don't get me wrong, I love these a lot as well, but I don't know what. I think Japanese books are just so cozy and comforting. So enjoyable to read, and I think a big part of what makes them so enjoyable to read is the the writing, because most Japanese books are written in the in the first person singular, so in the I perspective, and that makes it really it's really agreeable to follow. It's a very agreeable reading flow, and most sentences are really simple and basic, so that's, I think, what makes it so enjoyable to read and so easy. So that's also why I think if you are not that much into reading, I think that starting with some of these Japanese books could really, make you love books and literature and Japanese books. So I'm just going to recommend my favorite Japanese books, some of my favorite Japanese books. I have so many more, so many books that I think could also be in this video, but I've limited myself to to the best ones, and I think to some that are really easy to start with. So, 始めましょう. How you say in Japanese? Let's start. Right, so the first book I recommend is Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Sukegawa. So the reason why I recommend this book is because I think it's one of the best introduction to Japanese literature. It is really an easy read, so to get started, it's, I think, a really good book for that. Plus, first of all, the cover is really beautiful, and it's so Japanese. It has the sakura, it has the cherry blossom trees. It is about cherry blossom trees. It's set in the beginning during the cherry blossom season, so it really gets you beautifully into it. It really is the best way to start, I think, your Japanese book journey, because you are immediately immersed in the Japanese culture. This book is about one of my favorite things, so wagashi. It's the traditional sweets from Japan. It's about a little sweet shop, dorayaki sweet shops. Those are the sweet bean paste pancakes that are very famous in Japan. It is set in Tokyo. Now, it is a very sad story that probably will make you cry in the end, so be prepared for that. But I read it again recently because it made me, it's just such a beautiful story, full of mesmerizing imageries. It's a relationship between an old woman and a young man who has this dorayaki shop, and this woman starts working with this man to make sweet bean paste, and it's about old Japanese traditions about how to make sweet bean paste, why sweet bean paste is so special in Japan. It's I can only smile when I think about this book, because it's a beautiful story. I love the relationships between old people and young people. I think those are just the best types of stories, in my opinion. You can learn so much from old people. Japanese in Japan, old people are, if you know, very respected and very highly regarded. So that's why I think this book is perfect to start your way to start your Japanese journey, because you get you get to learn how the reading flow is, how Japanese books are written. The style is, for me, very typical for Japanese books. The story is so traditional. So Sweet Bean Paste is a big thumbs up for me, and I will always recommend this book first when I talk to people. Okay, so the next book is more the next 4 books that I will recommend. I will recommend them, but I will say that it's actually some of my least favorite Japanese books. It's not my least favorite. The stories are still very wholesome, but I think it's definitely books I think they're very cozy reads. Definitely coffee books. I don't know how else to explain it, but books that you would read in a little cafe for an hour or two. And it's also, those are all short stories that are connected sometimes, but that's why it's, I think, very, very comfortable to read, because you can always read one story. Usually a story is around 50 pages, sometimes more. So it's really, as I said, just a nice way to start reading if you don't have that much time and maybe have if you're struggling with reading. So that's that's, I think, really good for that. So what is it? It's a series called Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. It's very famous. It's an international bestseller. It started, you probably heard of it if you were on Book Talk on TikTok and all that. It's, the first book is called Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and all the books that follow are also have the same principles, set in the same cafes with this, sometimes the same characters, but I would say you don't really have to remember the characters necessarily to follow the story, because the thing is that the books came out you had to wait before the other books came out. So I have to say, when, like, just for example, last week the last book came out, Before We Say Goodbye. I think it's the last one from this series, and it's been a year since I read the others, so I didn't really remember the characters, but honestly it doesn't matter much in this series. So I think it's there's something for everybody in this series, because it has so many different stories in them. It's mostly about death, but also about breakups, about every single thing that most human beings can relate to. So that's why I think it's really for everyone. Also, I will also say the book covers are so incredibly pretty, so that definitely contributes to liking them. But they're really pretty on my bookshelf. There are some stories that I cried a lot. Very beautiful stories. So to have a general idea about what this series is about, so as the title says, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, it's about a cafe in Tokyo. Later it has another cafe in Hokkaido called Funicula. It's from the same cafe chain, let's say, and basically it's a cafe where you can go to back to the you can turn back time and go to the past or go to the future, but you're only allowed to do this in at a particular place in the cafe, and you can only be in the past before the coffee gets cold. As soon as the coffee gets cold, you have to return to the present, and you can do the same thing by going to the future. And so this is the general concept of all these stories. So as you can imagine, different clients come to the cafe and say, for example, my wife passed away and I would love to go back to the past to talk to her one more time and get things resolved. So yeah, those are all different stories for different people. As I said, some are very, very sad, as you can imagine. I mean, if you go to the past to see a loved one that is already dead, and sometimes go to the past to tell them that they're about to die, it's it's quite sad. The only reason why I think this series is not my favorite, it's not my favorite, but it just doesn't blow me away as much as other books, is because Kawaguchi is used to write a lot of theatre plays, and I can see it in these stories as well, that it is more, I could see this being a theatre play. That would be so interesting to have these books at a to make this book for a theatre play or for movies or for a series. I think that would be incredible. I don't know if this is something that already has been in discussion already, but that would definitely be something I would watch more than read, I think. But yeah, there is something for everyone in these books. So yeah, Before the Coffee Gets Cold series is definitely great. My next recommendation is Lonely Castle in the Mirror. I've already talked about this book in another video. My goodness, it's one of my absolute favorite Japanese books. It's by Mizuki Tsujimura. Everyone will love this book. It's a mix of fairy tales, magic, Harry Potter, Japanese style Harry Potter. It's about 6 children that are trapped in a castle for months. They don't go to school, they are together, they play video games. It's just, I don't want to say more about this story. It's just buy it and read it and you will love it. You will cry, so it's also a very, very sad ending, but overall, what a joy that was to read. And also the movie came out in Japan, the anime movie, so I still hadn't had the opportunity to watch it, but I hope I will be able to watch it soon. And so yeah, this book is probably the one I recommend the most out of all of them. Yeah. Next Japanese book I recommend is I've also talked about it already, but it's Heaven by Miko Kawakami. It's also a bestseller. Breast and Eggs is another bestseller from Miko Kawakami, and I recommend Heaven especially to students and to people that are in high school. I think this is such a good read. It's about bullying, and it's my favorite book about the topic of bullying and being bullied, and how also to learn more about the perspective of the person who bullies. So it's really for everyone, because I think everyone has either bullied someone or been bullied in school. It's really sad to say, but I think it's just part of going to school, and I think it could really change the way people. I think it could really help people in school to read this book, and it's beautifully written. I think Miko Kawakami has a very unique writing style, a very beautiful one. There are letters in the book. It's also a very beautiful, cute, traumatizing love story. So it has everything that makes it a perfect Japanese read. So the next book I recommend is my favorite book of all time. It's my favorite book in the world. It's Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. No words can explain and express how much this book means to me. I'm not forcing anyone to read it. I did force my friend to read it. I basically harassed him until he read it, and he confirmed that it was a good book. Haruki Murakami is my favorite author of all time. He's the person I admire the most in the writing world. I read most of his books, and yeah, that confirms it for me that there's no author like Murakami. And first of all, he is the name when it comes to contemporary Japanese literature. He was the one that made Japanese books more accessible internationally, and all the books that followed, I think, from Japan took lots of inspiration from Murakami as an author. Even like Lonely Castle in the Mirror, the review from The Guardian also says that it's very Murakami-esque and has lots of Wind Up Bird Chronicles elements, which is another book from Murakami. So you see how much he inspired writers all over the world, I think. And even, if I ever write, I just aspire to be like Murakami. He's just the best. I also read his book that came out recently about being a novelist, and that's a book where he explains how it's like to be a writer. He gives advice to young writers on how to be consistent, how to write, how he became a writer. So I definitely recommend this book if you start liking Murakami. I think Kafka no Shore is the best book to start, because this is peak Murakami. It's his it's just his world, this book. It has every element that you can expect from a Murakami novel, where it is very dreamlike, surrealistic, but it always makes sense. It's basically surreal realism. And this book has everything I ever wanted from a book. It's about love, it's about coming of age, it's about death, it's about war, it's so philosophical. It answers all your questions. It has incredible music references, cinema references from the French New Wave, François Truffaut. It talks about books, poems. This book, it's like a book of life. I don't know, it's a journey. When I read it, it took me about a week to read, and I will always remember how incredible this week was for me. I was in this book and I did not want to let it go. And this book changed my life, and that's why I want to recommend it, because I don't know if it will help other people, if it will also be life-changing for others, but I think there's something for everyone in this book. Also, if you are a cinephile or not, if you just know David Lynch as a filmmaker, I always think of David Lynch when I read Murakami, because it's the way he talks about dreams and is surrealistic is very much David Lynch, but in a book, in literature, in form of literature. Also, I think the book cover, as you can see, describes the book very well, and as you can see, it doesn't really make sense, but it does when you read. It's raining eels, and it has lots of cats and a weird white stone, and it's beautiful. That's all I have to say, really. Please read it, please give it a try. So the next book I recommend, I think I have to recommend, it is still considered modern Japanese literature, but it's a book from the 20th century. It's by Natsume Soseki. It's Sanshiro. So most people recommend Kokoro, which I also read by Soseki, but I would say I want to recommend Sanshiro first, because first of all, it has an intro if you buy the Penguin Classic Edition by Murakami, because it's a book that Murakami loves. Is very dear to Murakami, and it inspired him. That's why I also wanted to mention this book, to write Norwegian Wood. And there are lots of similarities between Norwegian Wood and Sanshiro. So I would read Sanshiro first and then Norwegian Wood, because you can definitely, like, when you read Norwegian Wood, you'll see, oh yes, I see where Murakami got his inspiration from. And besides, Sanshiro is such a great book. It's an incredible coming-of-age story. I think for the time that it was written in, it's very modern. especially in Japan, I think. Yeah, it has beautiful sceneries of Japan. It starts with a train ride going to Tokyo, from living in the countryside, coming to a beautiful big city. It's about love. It's about being a student. So yeah, the writing style is so poetic. It's Sasuke. It's so good. Sasuke good. Yeah. And yeah, as I already said, the other recommendation is also Murakami. It's Norwegian Wood. It's a very sad story, but at the same time, it's beautiful, sad and beautiful. It's a very similar story. It's about a young student. It's a love story between a guy who was in love with someone but starts to fall in love with another girl. It's about suicide, it's also very sexual, but in a very interesting, nice, twisted way. That's also very typical things from a Murakami book. It's a shorter read than Kafka on the Shore, so you could obviously also start with Norwegian Wood first. It's also very, very peak Murakami, obviously, since it's from him. But yeah, Norwegian Wood, absolutely beautiful book. The next book is really fun. So yeah, the last few books I recommended are quite sad and dark sometimes, but this one is so fun to read. I read it in the train on my way to London this summer. It's a memoir, so it's a true story, it's real. It's about Shoji Morimoto, who is a famous person on Twitter. This book is so cool. It's such an interesting story. It's Shoji Morimoto is a person who does nothing for a living. So he doesn't get paid for basically accompanying people everywhere they want. And this is true. This is something he does on Twitter. You can look him up. And people ask him to go to Starbucks with them. Just to be there. He doesn't even have to talk much. He just has to be there, and the presence alone, him being there, is enough for people. It's fascinating. He talks about all his different stories and all the different things he encountered, and about a job that he kind of invented that is fascinating. So it's it's not fiction. It's a real story. It's just a memoir, but so cool and interesting, and also a new part of Japan, and a person that is very famous and in Tokyo. And I don't know, but if I ever go to Japan, which is my plan, I would love to actually meet this person. That would be so cool. I think you can just ask him on Twitter, do you have time on Monday to go to Shibuya with me and have lunch? And then he just accepts, and you don't even have to pay him. You just have to pay him the cost for the train and the shikatetsu, the metro, and that's it. It's a fascinating book, really. I can only say you will enjoy this. The next book I recommend is Sayaka Murata. She is a very creative writer, I'd say. It's such a funny story. I absolutely love this book. It's about a woman working in a convenience store, and she loves this job so much. It's all her life is basically this convenience store. Yeah, you will definitely love this book. It's a short read, very simple writing style, and very funny. Plus it has a great message for people in their 20s and 30s who don't really know what to do with their lives. I love this book. The last book I recommend today, I could go on for hours, is How Do You Live by Genzaburo Yoshino. It's one of the most famous children book in Japan. It's simply beautiful, and I think that even if you're not a child, you can learn a lot from this book. It's Hayao Miyazaki, Miyazaki's one of his favorite books of all time, and he got inspired by it for his new Ghibli movie that is coming out, and I'm actually going to watch next week, and I'm so excited. Japanese people already saw it, but next week is film festival, and I'm going to be able to see it at a special screening, so I'm so thrilled because I love Studio Ghibli movies so much, so I can't wait. And it's inspired by this book, so yeah, how can it not be good? Ghibli and this book together, it's impossible. Plus it's music from Joe Hisaishi. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Anyway, so it's incredible. And yeah, it's very easy to read because it's written for children. So yeah, those are all the books that I recommend today. Those are a lot of books, and I hope that some of you will find a book that they love. Maybe I hope that I gave good recommendations. I think there's something for everyone in there, and maybe I'll do more videos on Japanese books in the future. I could talk for hours about Japanese books. I could do an entire video just about Kafka on the Shore and about Murakami for sure. And that's it. And it was really fun to just talk about my favorite books. And that's it for today. 見てくれてありがとうございます which is thank you for watching.